The schooling question, it is a decision that we have just recently made with our son. A year ago, before the COVID pandemic hit, I would have told you that we were 100% doing homeschooling, no questions asked. And by some miraculous turn of events, the pandemic brought about so much growth in our son. We were finally able to toilet train our son. He started riding a bike. His speech was like a rocket. I didn't want to shut off or turn down or anything. It was incredible, the progress. But when the fall came around and it was his final year before schooling age technically, we did decide to defer a year to maximize funding and decided to try preschool out, which for the most part was a very eye-opening experience. We started to notice that he was getting comfortable at preschool, and comfortability brings comfortable behavior. And so we saw him revert to some behaviors that we see at home, which was odd because we've never seen them at therapy, we've never seen them at play dates. So it was a big learning curve. And so we spent 3 months before the end of preschool in this chaos of, well, we know he could do public school, but do we think he's going to do it with a good quality of life? No, I don't. And we were in a unique situation because we had missed the mark on homeschooling. So we felt really trapped. And we met so many times with the kindergarten team, and it was all the team that we have for intervention anyways. And everybody kept saying that our son was a prime candidate, like he was an organ donor. It was brutal. He's a prime candidate for public school. What does that even mean? I don't know. And yeah, he's a prime candidate. Why? Because he can talk, because he can tell you what he needs. That doesn't mean you're going to give it to him. We saw it at preschool. He'll tell you he needs a break, but you'll push those limits and see how far you can get. And then it ends up being an absolute mess. So when we found out that they were not going to give him the support that he rightfully deserved, we were in a really difficult situation. And we found that one of the other development centers here where we live has a learning center, is what they call it, which essentially they just take like a homeschooling curriculum. It was 3-on-1 with 3 diverse kids and 1 teaching person in there teaching the curriculum. And we decided to do a meeting with the center's administrator and just ask her some questions. And it was really apparent to my husband that that was definitely the best situation for our son to be in. No questions asked. I've never had anxiety about dropping him off at therapy, but every single day I was dropping him off at preschool, anxiety attack. Every day I was picking him up, anxiety attack. Every time I seen his teacher's name pop up on my phone, physical anxiety attack. It was so unsettling is the best thing that I can say. But I found myself consistently struggling with the decision, do I put him in a learning center or do I go with what everybody's telling me to do and put him in public school? And I had that conversation with my husband so many times. And my husband's like, how is this even a question? Like, you're usually so quick with making these decisions. Like, you know, on paper, like if you write out the pros and cons list, which is the most cliche but best advice you can do, there is no con to putting him in this learning center, aside from people thinking he's not getting the socialization he needs, which, what does that even mean anymore? Honestly, what does that even mean? And so my dad called me one day, and he totally called me out, and he said, I need to tell you something, and I need you to hear this, and I need you to listen to everything that I'm saying, and I need you to think about it. And I said, okay, what are you going to say? Because my dad never puts his opinion in on anything. And he said, I think that you need someone to tell you that your decision to pull your son from public school is not about him. It's got nothing to do with him. It has nothing to do with the school. He said, this is all boiling down to you because you know that the second that you decide to pull the plug on public school, it's your very last piece of acceptance into knowing your child is autistic, and he's just not going to have the same experience as other kids. And I just started crying, and I was like, oh my goodness. You're right. He totally called me out because it was. And I have accepted him the most out of anybody in the world. I was that person. And I still found myself in a little bit of denial at 5.5 years old, which shook my world a little bit and made me question years of decisions because have I been making decisions for him truthfully, or have I been making selfish decisions for myself? And I dealt with that self-deprecating mindset I gave myself a few days, and I was like, no, every decision that I've made has been for him, just like the decision to pull him from public school. And as soon as I get off the phone call with my dad, I sent the school district an email and I was like, please be advised, my son will not be attending for this reason and this reason and this reason, because I think it's important that they know. And I messaged the administrator for the center and said, can't wait to start with you guys, send me over the registration paper. And now he's going there. I think that the schooling question is different for every single child. It all boils down to your child's challenges, their triggers. Our son once told me that a classroom felt like bees in his ears. That's what the sound of a classroom feels like for him. And that was soul shattering to hear him say that, because for me, I walk into a room and I can shut it all off. He can't. So he's inputting all of this noise and it just feels like mosquitoes in his ears. And I can't imagine how disruptive that environment is. So to be able to provide him with an environment where there's only 2 other children, that has a strong focus, he actually spends more time in the classroom learning than he does, because public school has so many recesses and lunch breaks and fun breaks and gym time. He actually has more learning time at a private learning facility. And they still do bake sales, they still do school pictures, they still do Christmas concerts. It's all the same. It's just a better environment with more understanding and support, which is what our children needs, but it's what my hyperactive 5-year-old on the spectrum needs. It could not be what your child needs. It's not to say that the public school system will not work, because it does for a lot of people, but the fact of the matter is they don't know enough about autism to be good enough supports that our children deserve.